Hello, my name's Alan Tyrrell. I'm the Artistic Planning Manager for the West Australian Symphony Orchestra, and I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by our guest conductor for the week, Jessica Gethin. Thanks for joining us, Jess.
Hi, good to be here.
Jess, you've just literally come out of the first rehearsal for this week's program. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to hear and what we should be listening out for.
It's a fantastic program. We open with Mendelssohn's Hebrides Overture, and then we're featuring the wonderful young violinist Emelina Huning, who's doing Mozart's Fifth Violin Concerto. And then after the interval, we have Dvořák's fantastic Eighth Symphony.
Oh, wonderful. And what have you been rehearsing today? What did you start with?
Today we've had our first rehearsal on the Dvořák, on the symphony, which went really well.
Oh, great stuff. Now, the Dvořák Eighth kind of plays second fiddle a little bit to its bigger brother, the Ninth Symphony, the New World. For me, the Eighth is every bit as great, and it has moments that are even greater. Why are we not so familiar with this one? What's the reasons behind this?
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree with you. The Eighth Symphony is fantastic. I think that it's seen sometimes a little superficially as being the first time they use lots of little tiny sort of folk melodies and motifs, these bohemian motifs that he uses through there. And it's seen as being optimistic and hopeful and light, but there's actually a lot more in it. It's got a lot of different layers that you can see. And I did a lot of reading actually on the time of his life and where he was, and perhaps a few suggestions that there were thoughts of his three children who he buried 12 years earlier within about a few months of each other. And that experience of loss, not from just the painful side, but kind of that nostalgic sort of side. And that's why we hear in these beautiful folk melodies this childlike innocence that's often heard by the flute, the cellos, which sort of narrate, as they do in Stabat Mater and the cello concerto as well. He uses that a lot. The cello section to sort of narrate the symphony. It's one of the first symphonies actually since Haydn that's written in G major, yet it doesn't start in G major. So there's lots of little surprises like that. It's a fantastic work.
It's the colours that Dvořák brings out of the orchestra, very Brahmsian, isn't it? He has the cellos playing in this very tenor register and accompanied by the clarinets and the horns, and it just makes this really, really rich, oily sound that is undeniably Dvořák, but could be Brahms.
Absolutely, he's got a lot of different influences in there actually. I mean, the second movement even pays a bit of homage to the Eroica, to Beethoven's symphony as well. There's moments of that, but in terms of the texture and the romanticism of how he orchestrates it, it's got a lot of that Brahmsian sound in it, yeah.
But it's definitely a gorgeous piece that's filled with sunshine, and you can't help but smile. And the waltz in the third movement is just one of the greatest moments where you just find yourself smiling as you listen, and you can't listen to it any other way than that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not that typical third movement scherzo feel. You know, it's got a lot more sort of breadth, and it's absolutely beautiful music, beautifully orchestrated. The second movement is far more sparse than any of his other second movements in terms of how it's done and written. But that's sort of where you see these opportunities to bring out certain colours or voicings or the different characters and play with it. He used the same material and motif from the first movement and the last movement all the way through, this GBD little triad that he uses, which they say might represent his children. And so he uses these things, but he sort of explores them in so many different ways, quite subtly, that it ties together the four movements really well.
The GBD, is that from the bird call as well in the flutes, in the cor anglais?
Yes. So they did yum ba-dum ba-dum, and that kind of plays on this bird call, which I think also represents the it's a traditional sort of folk melody sounding thing. It's like an innocent child, playful kind of thing. But the last movement with the opening of the cellos also have this G-B-da, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. And they say that perhaps this kind of represented his three children, each one of them, one of the letters, and how they are then voiced and through all the lines and the melodies that they represent.
You just mentioned as well about how one idea almost feeds into the next one. It's a bit what this symphony, I feel like, is with the melodies. They're literally tripping over themselves. He had no problem writing a great tune, a bit like Tchaikovsky. Didn't waste any time going too far into one tune before he's into his next melody. I think that's one of the reasons why it's so very easy to listen to.
It is, but I think it's also in the way that they're connected, and that's for us to look at when we're performing it. I think I read somewhere that he puts way too many melodies in this one thing, but actually, when you actually see how they reflect off each other and how they connect up and what they're saying, what their purpose is, and sometimes there's certain inversions of other different parts. So if you actually look at it really closely, you can see this magical way how he's orchestrated it. It's beautifully done and quite different to a lot of his other works.
Yeah. It's going to be a fantastic concert, that's for sure. Last week we had another great concert, and you were with us last week. We did 4 performances of Carmina Burana. Even for a work that's as popular as that is, I think that must be some kind of record.
I think so.
How demanding was that for you and for everybody involved, all the singers and the orchestra? And it's quite grueling, I imagine.
Yeah, look, I think that the life of a conductor is like that anyway. So you get very used to being able to put yourself in a mindset where you are just very focused, and you know, often we are usually getting off planes and we're jet lagged and we're working through the night and flying on to the next place. So to actually come from your home is actually a bit of a luxury as well. But you learn to just be able to just bring it back to the score. I do need to be aware of things like vocal fatigue, for instance, for a chorus. It's not just the 4 performances, it was also the 2 nights prior where we rehearsed and did full sing. So it was actually 6 sing-throughs, you know, in a row of a massive work where I guess getting that architecture of the whole, you know, process of the rehearsals, the stamina is really important to feel the flow, connection of each of the movements.
How to pace yourself.
How to pace yourself, absolutely, something that I watch. But it also allows for this wonderful opportunity where you can try something a little bit different and, you know, play on something, and, you know, the trust further develops each time you do it with the orchestra and the chorus. And I like to keep them on their toes, and we're going to push this a little bit more tonight, or we're going to try and, you know, bring something else out. So it also has a lot of really good advantages that we can play with it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, we're just so lucky right now that we are able to come together and do these concerts. I feel for everybody around the world who are still not quite at this stage yet, but we're so lucky that we've been able to have all of these concerts. When we were in lockdown, how did you keep yourself busy as a conductor? I mean, I remember so many different singers and instrumentalists doing everything on video and on YouTube and on Zoom. And, I mean, for a conductor, you can't just stand in front of a camera and conduct yourself.
No, it's a very silent, lonely, lonely thing to do that.
How did you do to manage and be creative during this time?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, one that I've been asked a lot, actually, because people, I've noticed that artists either did one thing, they kind of shut down and felt really, you know, without that form of expression, it was a really lonely time, and other people got super creative. I was lucky that I had a number of the engagements that I'd been cancelled or postponed for, like an appearance with Singapore Symphony in March that got cancelled. They came to me and said, look, we'd love to still engage our audience in some way. Yeah. What can we do, you know, in terms of an online kind of presentation? So I did things like a 5-part series of Carnival of the Animals, where I broke down the music and even had to learn to draw animals very quickly. That's what I did during lockdown, and presented these 5 videos online for Singapore Symphony. I revisited a lot of different scores that I was looking at. I did quite a bit of guest sort of workshop online as well, different places around the world, and online lecturing for WAPA and things like that. So I found that I managed to keep fairly busy. I had my 2 kids at home as well. We did a lot of the kaboom percussion tutorials together, which was fantastic. And I played a little bit, actually. I haven't played much for years. I'm originally a violinist. And so I found that was kind of a really important, I think, escape, because we do express ourselves so much through what we do every day as an artist. And so, we really sort of miss that. I probably talked with my hands a lot more than normal because they were restless.
You needed something to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of people won't be aware because it wasn't open to the public, but when the orchestra did come back together, you were here helping the orchestra play together for the first time after we were all locked on for such a long time. And you also spent a few days with our Emerging Conductors program, tutoring them or mentoring them as they stood up in front of the orchestra for the first time. How important is it for these young conductors to get, number one, access to a great orchestra like WASO, but also instant feedback from another conductor to help them learn their way through the pitfalls of standing in front of a band?
It is vital. It is absolutely crucial. I mean, as an instrumentalist, you can have lessons, workshops, masterclasses. You can play, you can record, you can get that sort of feedback, and you can hear. You know yourself what it's like. Conducting is it can be such an enigma of a thing, and you really, only about 10% of it is actually what we physically the choreography, I guess, of the beat patterns and where we're moving. It is nothing without the response of musicians, which is going to be changing every time depending on what the repertoire is, who the orchestra is. It's such an organic sort of process, that relationship with the orchestra. And if you don't try things and go, oh, when I do this, that happens and that response happens, you'll never learn. You need to physically feel it. And it is so important that we support these programs. I mean, every single conductor that you had up there walked off exhilarated, inspired, terrified before, and just said, that was the most incredible. If I never experienced that again, I'll be happy, because it just made sense. All these things that you think you can sort of feel, if you don't have that real response, you'll never learn. It is so important to support these programs.
Well, thank you for supporting them the way you did, and thank you for just being with WASO for such this long period now. You feel like part of the family for the past few weeks. You've done the WA Ballet season Dracula for how many weeks was that? It was
about 3 weeks.
3 weeks, 2 weeks concerts. The Rehearse and Rebuild. It's been fantastic having you with us, and we're so grateful that you joined us here today as well. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you.